right. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health Mondays. I am Mind Runner, sometimes known as Aaron. My
Ron.
guest at this time, he is one half of the Dukes of Dynamite Download, the number one most positive AEW podcast in the entire universe. Quoted by QT Marshall as a force of positivity on the interwebs. His name may sound like he's from New Orleans, but that is not
Crayfish,
true.
baby.
He is, MJF called him the drizzling shits. He is the number one Dax Harwood impersonator. All the way from Detroit, Michigan, he called by way of North Carolina. His new role is Dada. He
That's
is
right.
Crayfish. Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Awesome.
Man.
Thanks
Man,
for
your
being here,
intros are
Crayfish.
epic, bro. Oh, what a way to set it off.
I need to get like a gif of the broom girls
broom
behind me
girls.
going.
I tried. I'm not quite as pretty, but I tried, man. Great stuff, man. Awesome intro.
Well, I'm glad to have you, dude. Again, it's
Thanks.
between you and SBD, man. You guys are two of my favorite people to talk wrestling with, but you're also two very positive people in general. And I wanted to kind of, just like we got behind the shades with old SBD.
Yeah.
I want to get behind the shell, if you will. I guess.
All right, yeah, I'll get out.
But I want to just talk to you a lot about because you and SBD do have a history.
Our stories kind of interwove for sure.
You kind of been two characters in the same storyline for quite a while. So I'm glad to have you, and
Thanks,
I hope to not keep you up too late. But
this is great, man. We can vibe. I'm good. Baby's down now, so Dad's off duty. I can hang out. So it's good stuff, man.
First thing I want to kick off. I mean, we definitely want to get into the history of you and SBD, but I first want to ask, how do you feel like your life has changed now that you are Papa or Dada?
Yeah, man, that's a great question, and I'll put it this way, right? Like when he came home and when I got to see the little guy, I think for dads it's a little different, right? Like mom is so connected to the baby, and that instant need from a very early on, that early stage, it's mom. It's mom. And so for me, it was like, everybody's different, but in my life, like I always just kind of wanted to be a dad and have a family. And some of that was because like growing up, I was a fat kid, never really had the opportunity to like develop. I thought sometimes at times when I was down that was just a pipe dream.
Yeah.
So like when I got married and when I had Cash come home, a lot of my dreams did come true. So I was just happy. It was just a lot of joy. But over the last couple of weeks here, my little guy has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Oh.
And so he's only 18 months old. So he's incredibly young to have juvenile diabetes. Rushing my little guy to the ICU and, kind of watching, again, an 18-month-old get more shots than I've had in my entire life.
Wow.
It's put things in a different perspective. I think that these last few weeks have really reminded me what it means to be a dad. Moms and dads play very different roles in kids' lives, and again, like he turns to her for the comfort. And I think until recently, until this chapter happened, what it really means to be a dad didn't really set in the sense that like my role was just sort of there to support my wife and to make sure my little guy was happy. But now there's a different call to action, I guess, the way that I've been trying to come to peace with it, because obviously, man, when you get that kind of diagnosis and you see your kid going through this and to realize that he's going to be dependent on medicine for the rest of his life, unless there's and medicine has come a long way, and it's incredible to see what they're doing. But, to have doctors basically tell you he's going to need this for the rest of his life, he's not even 2, that hits you in a different way as a dad. And it just makes you realize, like, my job is to protect him. and to provide for my wife and my son, and make sure that, we continue to give him what he needs to be okay. And so, yeah, man, it's a different feeling. I mean, now, the priorities, and I just see the way I look at life is changing even that much more now. It's forced me to grow up a little bit, even more so. I mean, SPD talked about it in our podcast, in your podcast with him, about how, he's the Leonardo of our group, right? He is the one who's steady and stable, and I'm the Raphael. I'm the emotional one. And sometimes, like, I could go and kind of go off the deep end and kind of run very hot and run very cold. And I've seen the importance of the mental health, and part of that is just being a master of your own domain, not letting your emotions rule you. Because trust me, like right now, I've gone through anger and grief and sadness and questioning God as to why this is happening, and fear of, like, my son could have gone into a coma and stuff like that. So it just, all of those emotions, if you allow yourself to be constantly a victim of your emotions, it can lead you to kind of feel like you're constantly on a roller coaster. So that's a new challenge that I'm facing. Sort of, it's forcing me to look at my own mental makeup and how I've navigated life to this point, and realize what my family needs now more than anything is stability. So how do you rein those emotions in when that's sort of been who you've been your whole life? And so definitely a unique chapter right now.
Yeah, it's interesting too. You mentioned not be a victim of your own emotions, and I think a lot of times we let the emotions kind of guide us. Which, for passionate people, I never feel like, I always try to tell my students that you can't help feeling your emotions. Like, it's just like if you felt wet when it was raining. It's how you handle it. It's how you handle those emotions. And I can't imagine, like, all of a sudden it's like, now you've got the little guy, you got a little Cash, and he's your world now. You've got somebody to protect. And I got to ask quickly, of course, Cash is as in Cash Wheeler, as in,
as a wrestling fan, I will, I'll always hold that in the back of my mind and remind him when he's watching AEW with me older, and like when he gets a little older, that, but more than anything, it was just, we like the CC vibe. We both like Johnny Cash.
There you
go. We felt like, with a name like Cash Cray, he's going to grow up to be a cool kid. So,
well, as long as you didn't name him a boy called Sue, or man
yeah,
called
he can't hate me too much. He's not named Sue. Yeah. So no, but yeah, I mean, obviously, I'll be Dax and he can be Cash, and we'll be the FTR.
You got to have that photo someday. The two of you holding the belts, and you got to grow the mustache out a little bit.
I like it.
But that's got to be, and it's a lot of times we talk about gratitude, and I always try to be, you got to be realistic. One thing that SPD and I talked about was the difference between realistic positivity and toxic positivity. But it does, we are in like you said earlier, this is a time where who knows what medical breakthroughs are just around the corner. Diabetes is not a death sentence anymore. It's, there's a lot better treatments now. I've had a couple students that manage their diabetes throughout the day. So, and it seems to be also like students understand, it's not like a target for bullying anymore. Oh, you're the sick kid or something.
Yeah.
It seems to be a much more accepted deal. So that's pretty cool. And there's something to be said, man, about sometimes, life tells you it's time to grow up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that is certainly a thing that, and to your point, I mean, you see it, the next generation typically always, we always, man, these kids are growing up, and it's easy to kind of dog on the next generation in the ways in which they're failing, or that they're different from us that we don't like. But I do think that, we are raising more mindful kids, and that's not to say that, kids can be cruel, and we all have gone through those stages where inadvertently you may have said something that you didn't mean to hurt somebody, but you do it. But I do think that this next generation of kids is more aware of, as you've talked about here, mental health and the importance of being kind, and recognizing that you don't know what anybody's going through. And I think and for me, man, like, again, there are days certainly that you get frustrated or you get discouraged. But I do hold to the belief that, this is going to be something that's going to put him on the path that he's supposed to be on.
Yeah.
And it's going to shape him to be the man that he's supposed to be. When this first happened, people think diabetes, and a lot of times they associate it with type 2 diabetes. And I'm not a small guy, so people are looking at dad wondering, hey, they're think, that type of connotation. And I think when I first had this happen with Cash, there was a part of me where my heart broke, and I was like, the sins of the father get passed on to the next generation. Like, is my son suffering because of a sin that I've struggled with my whole life, which is weight? I mean, when I look back on my pictures when I was little, I've been heavy my whole life. And so I wonder, that when that happened, it really hit me and broke my heart. It was like, is my little guy going to be suffering because of that? And, you wrestle with that, and you end up recognizing, man, one, I don't believe God works that way. And two, he is going to be forced to be more mature. He's going to be forced to be more cognizant. We as a family are being more cognizant of what we're eating, what we're making. When you have to be mindful of the sugar intake and things like that, it's going to force him to kind of step up and be a mature kid and be able to make tough decisions and know how to take care of himself.
Yeah.
And that's going to shape him to be the man that he's supposed to be. And so I've come to peace with that. My role now is to try to, I've heard you talking about wanting to get, wanting to focus in on yourself, trying to do better habits. I've looked at this as a wake up call too, as a dad. There has to be some things that I do to help model a better life for my son. And so, that is something that I'm taking personally, and I'm kind of on that same walk and that journey with you, because, that's the thing, although he's going to be wrestling with this, I had many prayers where I asked God, I don't want my son to wrestle with what it's like to be overweight and to struggle with that, with the impact of your mental health, the depression that can sometimes come with being overweight, the not feeling comfortable in your own skin. I always prayed. I didn't want him to have that. So, it is interesting how God sometimes answers prayers, and he's going to be forced to make some better decisions than dad did growing up. So I don't know, man. I mean, it's a constant narrative in the mind about why this is happening. And, I think that you always have to continue to center yourself on, there is a purpose to all of our lives, and whether we know it in the moment or not. And so when we go try to focus back in on that positivity, man, you could wallow in that self-pity and that victim mentality. And I could continue to be upset but where's it going to get me and my family? Right. Yeah. So look at this and recognize that there are positives we can take out of it, that we can use as catalysts for change for us as a family, and let it be a foundation for the future in a good way. So that's kind of like, it is that constant, that narrative in the mind that you've talked about with other guests, the self-talk.
Yeah.
And how do you filter out, like, where does toxic positivity come into it? Well, sometimes you have to force yourself to seek the good, even in negative situations. And trying to be positive and happy all the time is really a difficult thing to do. But as long as you're allowing it to look inward, I think that that's something that I've learned. We'll get into this later on, but the extrovert versus introvert thing is something that you've talked a lot about. And I think that as long as you're using that positivity to focus in on yourself. I think that too often we look at positivity and kindness and all the stuff that you need to go out and fix people. You need to go out and be that like, hey, how are you doing? And that was something that I felt trapped into, you know, growing up, is that extrovert, trying to kind of silence the sadness inside by being a bubbly, over the top,
making others happy.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so I've learned as I've gotten older, that positivity, as long as you're a lot, like, you need to be utilizing that inward. And if you love yourself, it'll show in how you treat other people. And it doesn't need to be forced at that point. So it's a growing up factor along the whole mental health journey that I'm on.
Yeah, it's 1,000%. So much good stuff that you just said there. One of the hardest things I found with a lot of people I talk with, especially myself, is that self-love. And of course, I'm not talking, this is not a kinky show, but I'm not talking about that. But like, just building up that that self-esteem. And you know, I grew up, I was a heavy kid growing up, and then like around middle school, I was in sports and I hit a growth spurt. And all of a sudden, I was on the wrestling team, and all of a sudden I was like this, 4% body fat, this guy. And then, but then once I hit my 30s, man, like, woo, that metabolism just shut down. And now I'm, and it's weird because where I'm at, like, mentally, I feel like I'm much better than I was in my 20s. I certainly have a much better grasp of the world than I did back then. My early 20s, sometimes I just want to smack them.
You and me both, brother. You're not alone. You're not alone.
And there's something about that mid 20s where you feel like you're the world expert on everything, and then the world kicks you in the teeth. Yeah. But how was it kind of growing up with that? And growing up with, did you always have that feeling that you weren't good enough, or was it a struggle? Were there moments where you and what gave you confidence? What were some things that gave you confidence growing up?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think, I was younger, I was always pretty good at school, and I was a pretty smart kid. But I was always heavy. I mean, Sean is really, SPD was really good at keeping pictures from our childhood and sharing pictures, and kind of like going down memory lane randomly to just make us all feel good. And that's one of the things we all love about him.
Back in his modeling days too,
it's easy for him to look back on those pictures, right? Like, I mean, this is the guy who, yeah, exactly. This is the guy who was in, in under waterfalls and all this stuff. And so for me, when we look back on those pictures, there is a certain sense of sadness, so it's a complex thing. My childhood is complex in that way. And I think I went through a good amount of bullying, a good amount of rejection. You so desperately want there does come a point, when you so desperately just want somebody to like you and to be vulnerable. And as Sean has talked to you about, I was always the Dr. Phil of our group of friends. I was the softie. I was an emotional guy, and I've always leaned into that. There is a sensitivity to me, and I think some of that is because pain kind of creates that, like where the brokenhearted artist is oftentimes one of the more powerful ones.
Van Gogh cut off his ear, man.
Yeah. I mean, and you connect with, like, I'm a rock guy, and you think about Chris Cornell, and you think about, Chester Bennington. A lot of these guys are, great rock artists that really, when you look back on their music, a lot of it was crying out in pain, or looking at the world and questioning why you didn't fit in. And so, growing up, I was a pretty smart kid, and I was always kind of sensitive, and I got bullied pretty good, and it got to a point where, like, with girls, it was always really hard for me. Like, I was a nice guy. I overcompensated a lot of times by being overly sweet, and that's something that I've looked back on now, and I realized, like, a lot of that big personality, as Sean talked about in his podcast with you, like in high school, opening the door for everybody between passing times and greeting everybody and being this big over the top personality. A lot of it was a learned coping mechanism or a learned defense mechanism, in the sense that like there got to a point along my journey where I didn't really like myself, and I didn't really know if people would like the true me. And so I like put on the clown makeup. I described it to my wife after she broke down the walls and kind of got to know me, as like I felt like I had to wear a mask every day just to get people to want to know me, and that hurt some of my friendships along the way too, because from an outsider's perspective, now that I look back, if you're somebody and you're investing time and energy in developing a friendship with this guy who you think is the life of the party and this outgoing guy, and then out of nowhere you become good friends with them, and then you realize like they have these downer moments and they can kind of pull into their turtle shell, so to speak. I blindsided some friends growing up along the way because that really wasn't me. I'm not necessarily, now that I'm in my mid to upper 30s, like it is very hard to separate, it's become so entwined into who my personality is with people who know me. It's very hard to separate that persona from the person. And so, I will say it was a learned behavior, and I've thought a lot about like the introvert versus extrovert thing. And I feel like some of like the extrovert was a learned behavior, is to get people to overcompensate, essentially, to try to win people over, to get people to like me.
If they're smiling at you, they're not bullying you. They're not They're not talking smack about you. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so if you can kill them with kindness and kind of be that like over the top personality, you're getting them to laugh with you rather than laugh at you. It was a win. And so, as I've matured and grown up a little bit, and as I guess the importance of having other people's approval or friendships in my life has sort of faded a little bit. It's kind of made me recognize, like, just be yourself, and if people don't like that, then that's okay. You have to be okay with yourself, and that is the internal journey that I think that really takes the most work. Right. It's easy to win people over. That I realize, like I'm even in work, right? Like I feel like I can get along with anybody. It's easier for me to win other people over than to win myself over, to win the voice inside, win that over.
Yeah.
And so that's where the real work goes in.
It's interesting. What you said there, it's sometimes you're the hardest person to win over for yourself. Absolutely, whether it's imposter syndrome or it's just that self-doubt or that, second guessing. And a lot of times I think with folks like us, we tend to overthink sometimes what other people think, where I remember one time, it was in middle school, and this girl smiled at me. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I got to ask her out. What do I got to do? I got to say something really cool. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? So I freaked out about it for the whole hour. And all she was doing was just smiling. It was like, and she smiles at everybody. It was just, she's probably just thinking, I'm going to have vanilla ice cream after school. Something like that. But it's,
but you internalized it because you wanted it to be true.
Yeah. I was like, oh, all this time. Do you feel regret over a lot of the stuff you went through, or do you feel like it shaped you to who you are today?
Yeah, man. Like, one of the things I've been challenging myself to do, which is a really hard spell to break because I think society really reinforces it, is I'm trying to break the victim consciousness, where like looking at myself as a victim of the circumstances of life and how unfair things are, or how I may disagree with other people, or the way the world is going, and things like that, and to continue to play into the victim mentality. I'm trying really hard to break that, and I'm finding that like that is a really difficult thing to do on a day-to-day basis and a moment-to-moment basis. So, looking back, yeah, mine. There are things that I'm not proud of, or that I wish that I could have done different. There are certainly things that I realize caused domino effects in my life that were painful, that I wish I could have changed. Um, and maybe I like go back and just shake, the little kid, remind him to be more mindful of the physical, the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, all those healths are blended together, young man. Like, that would be some of the advice that I would give is, these things are all tied together. And
Mhm.
just like you've talked about, when you're eating junk, you feel like junk up here.
Yeah.
When you're consuming junk media, you feel empty and junky in your spirit. These things are all tied together. When you're allowing bad thoughts or bad things to come in, it affects you. So, looking back on my life, I will say, if I spend too much time in certain moments or certain chapters, it can be painful and sad. But I tend to look at it as to say, man, I always dreamed that I would be able to be in the scenario that I'm in, which is to be a man that is trusted to have a wife and to have a family. Um, there were times in which I never thought that dream would come true.
Mhm.
And so I'm grateful for it. Allow gratitude. And that's what there's been a common theme. A lot of your shows is the act of gratitude and the role that plays on the way you feel and think inside. And so just trying to practice gratitude of, man, like, my dreams have come true. And the journey to get here wasn't always easy, but it's also prepped me to, I think, be a softer dad in some ways, and also guide my son to make sure, because I've like you talked about the 20s, I have definitely lived a life where I've done a lot of excess, I've done a lot of things, I've gone off the rails. So I think that it's allowed me to see the pitfalls, to know the importance of trusting yourself and to loving yourself and to working hard towards who you want to be. And it's made me sensitive to be able to have those kind of real conversations with my son one day, in the hopes that I'll be able to raise him to be a mindful, respectful, um, you know, a good man. And that's a hard thing to do. I
Yeah.
think that to me, I think is, it has prepped me. My journey has prepped me in its own way. I have experienced like that pain, that frustration, that sadness at times, so that I know how to navigate it with him. And I don't regret that.
That's awesome. And I feel like the things that we go through prep us for exactly that. And how transformative was it meeting your significant other, your better
Yeah.
half?
Yeah. You know, Looking back on it, I think that maybe I didn't realize how blessed I was, in the sense that I had wanted someone to like me so much that when it happened, I was just kind of excited and happy. And it made me sometimes not think about what a unique person um, she had to be in order to see through a lot of the things that other people
Mhm.
didn't see. I was kind of caught up in the emotion, which
Yeah.
is again like a downfall that I've seen as a common pattern throughout my life. So now that I see, again, like, we are in a chapter where I am seeing, we feel like we're in the foxhole together, so to speak. When you
Mhm.
go through tough challenges as a couple or as an individual, when the chips are down, you really see the character of the people that you're with. And so, I've seen a woman that is willing to, stay up all hours of the night to make sure he's okay. I've seen a woman who has great intuition and instincts of what it means to be a mom and to make sure that he's okay, and monitors and watches our son in a way that I'm grateful for. So I see her character coming through in a whole new way right now in our marriage. That said, I mean, when she met me, um, you know, I had I had lost I had lost a good amount of weight. I had gone through um, lap band surgery And so I had lost at my biggest. I was at almost 400 pounds. I was 385 pounds. And when she met me, I was down to 230, 235. So I was feeling good. Nice. I've gained some back now. And so dad life is definitely been getting me again. I think I need to get myself back on track, but I lost over 150 pounds. And so I admittedly, I felt good about where I was. But she knew from the get-go that I was an onion. That's how she described it.
That's cool.
She knew that there were layers. And again, she saw this big personality, the guy who has no problem talking and being expressive, but she was always wondering, like, what happens when there's the quiet, who is this guy when the lights are off and kind of when he's left to himself and
when the curtains close.
Exactly. And that was always sort of something I liked about her. She's a very humble, down to earth person. And I think she's just, now that I look at the world and I see the person that I've been blessed to start a family with, I realize, and I know you see it with Deb. She was made for, she was exactly what I needed in my life. She was more mature than me in a lot of ways when we were younger. And we balanced each other out a lot, man. I'm really grateful for it. She stuck by me through thick and thin. She's a really good woman. And I think some of it, with how hard the childhood was for me when it came to not really experiencing the relationships that a lot of kids go through in college and, the hookup culture that we have and all that, I was definitely behind the 8 ball when it came to what it meant to love somebody, to sacrifice, to know what a relationship really means. I was behind the 8 ball. In a lot of ways, you romanticize it in your own head when you don't have it. And so when life got real, I didn't necessarily always know how to respond to it. And so she's been really patient. She's always pruning, always making me better.
You're her bonsai tree.
It's tough sometimes. She's got a lot of feedback for me, but she's always making me better. And even though it drives me nuts sometimes in the moment, I look at my life and I realize that she's exactly what I needed. I don't even know if I'd be here if I didn't meet her. That type of she's just really helped me in a lot of ways that I needed, that I wasn't willing to help myself. So
what a blessing. Yeah, man. Deb's the same way. Deb and I, and she says I'm the same thing for her. I imagine your wife says the same thing about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like we're our special person. It's like, and you think about it too. Like I love that she called you an onion. Because and peeling off all the layers and the things that she kind of had. It was like she's the perfect one for you. And I had to go before I met Deb, I had to really learn to treat people for who they are and not for who I want them to be or who I want them to think I am. And just once I really was like, hey, this is me, this is you. Once I started dealing with the realities and things that were more important, and then I met Deb, and it was just like, oh, this is perfect. She and I are goofballs. This is perfect. And she, and what's so crazy is she hated professional wrestling. And hated her whole life. She thought it was stupid.
Teaching all of us how to pick matches.
Right?
She's the best in the biz.
When I started watching AEW when it first became a thing, and we got the Full Gear pay-per-view, and she was just humoring me. I had my two of my buddies over, we're watching Full Gear, and we started talking about stuff, and I think it was the Young Bucks versus Luchas. And she just couldn't stop looking. And she just was, and she'll tell you that it was that in the Moxley Omega lights out match that they had, unsanctioned match, that hooked her. And from that point on, and now I argue that she's as big an AEW mark as I am.
That's incredible, man.
But it's like she's just, we do compliment each other. We now have new nicknames for each other. I'm Tranquilo and she's Fuego.
Yeah.
What it is that I'm the one that's like I tend to be the, hey, everything's gonna be okay. Let's figure this out.
Yep.
And she's the, you need to get your ass moving.
This is what we got to do. Here's the plan. This is how we're gonna execute. My dynamic's the same, man. Like I'm the one who, we phrase it a little differently. I'm the wind and she's the compass. Like either way,
that's cool.
The ship wouldn't be going without either one of us. I'm always the one who is kind of
like that.
The optimist. I'm always kind of pushing, like, babe, we got this. Things are always going to work out. I'm always kind of got that because she's a natural worrier, and thank God she is, because I try not to worry about anything. I kind of like live my life. And again, God's teaching me you can't live that way because, right now with the stuff we're going through, but like I've always kind of lived my life that like easy come, easy go. And she's definitely more of that, like that planner, the worrier, the wondering, and her life journey shaped her to be that way. Right. Like, I've gotten to learn, like, through her parents' divorce and abandonment issues, she was forced to grow up quick when she was little. And that has shaped her to like always feel like the shoe's going to drop, when life gets too good, something bad's going to happen. And so, we complement each other a lot, because I feel like if she was with somebody who was like her, they would be worrying sick. They'd probably have ulcers. It wouldn't be good. They'd be very organized and very on time, but they'd be worried sick. And if I was with somebody like me, we'd probably be homeless on the street. Right? So, and I think that chilling. We'd be hanging out
under the bridge.
I think some of it too, though, man. And I know your guys' journey started off with being online and kind of doing the online dating thing. Callie and I did the same thing, and I think it does. Again, it's adapting to the modern world, which I think when we met, there was a stigma around online dating, and now it's kids are doing on all sorts of apps and stuff that we would have never even dreamed of, right? But I felt like it really forced us to talk to each other and really just learn how to communicate and express yourself in a unique way. And I think that helps you also build that bond of like, this is my buddy. Right. I'm going to hang out and watch wrestling with my buddy. This is my best friend. Exactly.
Well, our journey was a little unique. We actually, it wasn't through a dating service or anything like that. We actually started doing a radio show together. And like, it was early before it was called podcasting. We had Reality Check Radio, and she and I just started really hitting it off. And, we would stay up late on Skype talking, and we started watching movies together. It was so cheesy. We'd watch Skype. We time it so we're both watching the same time. We go 3, 2, 1, press play at the same time. And there was one night where we stayed up until 11 a.m. the next day. We were watching True Beauty. I don't know if you ever heard of that show. And we were just hitting it off. And it was like, I remember hanging up with her. I felt like there's something here.
Yeah,
there's something there. And then we met, and here it is, the Chicago goddess and the Virginia Beach clown. And we met, and we were best friends ever since, and it's been great. And it's again, I think we both had prayed for someone like us, like, we both were looking for that. We both had we had friendships and relationships and that had gone sour. We had things going on in our lives that just weren't working out, and we just I wanted someone that got me, that, like you said, that could see behind the onion.
Yeah.
And she wanted, she wanted to be happy, and she, someone that like to meet her. And we weren't looking for like a significant other. We were just kind of trying to find our place in the world, and we hit it off. But yeah, there's something about getting to know somebody on a friendship level, not necessarily first, but developing that part early on that strengthens a relationship.
Yeah,
I think, and
I would agree. That would be advice that I would give my son one day too. Is just don't put so much pressure on falling in love. Try to put the emphasis and the focus on just caring about that person and being appreciative that they're in your life, and learning in ways in which how you two can help each other. Because I do think that everybody kind of cross paths for a reason, and it would be less about like that focus of like, you got to fall in love, you got to find that person, you got to find that soulmate, right? It's like they got to complete me and all that. No, it's just like, just be real and see who comes into your circle. Guard your heart, but like when someone earns your trust, it's gonna only strengthen things going forward. That's what it's all about, man. Is really the trust, and that's something that SPD talks a lot about. Is loyalty and trust. Those are principles that I know he really guides himself by. Again, the reason why he's the Leonardo, he's just very got that like that mindset of a leader. And I think that more of us should adopt that mentality of just like, how can I be a trustworthy person? How can other people lean on me? And what roles in which I can, if you take on that servant mentality of like, why am I in this person's life? How can I be of service to them? Things tend to fall into place a little bit. I've seen that even in work, when you approach work with, how can I, even though like it can be frustrating, but like, how can I help? So how can I go in today trying to help? And in some professions, it lends itself easier than others, right? If you're in nursing and teaching and things like that, it is every day you are kind of, you see that you are helping, but there are others that, toiling away in the cubicle, right? And you think like you get lost in that sometimes. And that is a challenge. Like, how can I be somebody who can serve others, and what role and impact am I going to play in other people's lives? And good people will come into your circle when you have that mentality. You don't need to try so hard. That's something that I've learned, is like, you don't need to try to be this funny, happy, bubbly guy. If you're just real and you're kind to people and you go into those relationships just trying to see what you can do to make their lives a little bit better that day, your circle is going to grow. People are going to want to be around you naturally. So
do you feel like society and has lost the importance of integrity, or do you think in some cases that's a virtue that our society's struggling with, or do you see that at all? Like, because I feel like we've come, or maybe we're coming out of it, but I feel like for a while there was a lot of what's in it for me mentality, and versus how can I help others?
Yeah, I really like where your head's at with that question. And I think that you probably have a great vantage point on that as well. Seeing all that you've seen as an educator, very selfless profession, but you genuinely get to see. And I was a teacher for a very short period of time. I didn't last. So I have a lot of respect for people who can hang in there. So, that said, I think that it's really easy, again, for me, that victim consciousness. It's very easy for me to fall into like, man, my values do not align with the culture in which I see so many engaging in.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be frustrating. It can be, if you can take it personal, like, why can't I, the old, like, everybody wants to rule the world, that song. Why can't the world just do things, and why can't everybody act the way that I want them to? It's really easy to get disappointed in the next generation or in your own generation of how people treat each other. That said, I try to offer grace and forgiveness to people, but I'm not perfect. And I will say that I do think that there are a lot of us who have offered up, who have fallen prey to the vast amount of temptations or sins that this society, particularly America, that this society makes at your fingertips, right? Like, the more comfortable you become with, I guess, sacrificing your integrity or indulging in things, the more comfortable you become with that, the more numb you become to things that chip away at your soul, right? Like, I mean, that to me is a very real thing. And I think that it does only further compound itself the more you get lost in the phone, the more you get lost in the matrix, so to speak. The further you get plugged into it, the more you buy into it. It is very hard not to come into moments or into situations where you feel like you are selling part of yourself to participate in the game. Like whether it's those drunken nights where you might have treated another person like a slab of meat, or like you indulged in too much alcohol or food or pornography. There's all sorts of things that are right now at your fingertips in our society that are more than willing to have your attention and your energy. But again, like what I talked about earlier about like what you let in what you consume, it has an impact on you.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there are a lot of people out there right now, Aaron, that are lost, that are hurting, maybe a little bit like don't want to come to terms with some of the life choices that they've made, because it's very easy to blend in when like this world that we live in. There's a lot of brokenness right now, man.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of coping mechanisms that'll help you through the day. It's very hard to take a break from those things and to really look at yourself in the mirror and say, who am I, independent of the internet, independent of the excess, the partying, independent of all those things. Who are you? And how has the world allowed that vision, that person you see in the mirror, to be blurred? Those are some heavy conversations, but I think that there's a need for that in our society. I do see there are portions of the world that are out there right now that are waking up a little bit. I do think that there are people who are rejecting the instant gratification, the excess of our society that we live in. I do think that there is sort of a counterculture movement that is happening. That's exciting as long as it leads to a path of, I think again, of introspection that causes you to try to climb the inward ladder to be who you're supposed to be.
I think that's great. And I think sometimes we forget how much we do have in the United States, in first world countries. When you go to a third world country and they don't have the things that we do. I think that's incredible. How important is, and I use the term in general, spirituality in helping shape your life and like that, and also with that, the determining when to focus on the things that are within your control, and then not letting those things that are not in your control submit to a higher power or submit to whatever.
Yeah. And I think that, like, really quick, jumping on like the comment that we have so much, when you compare it to other countries around the world, that is so true. But it's also, I would say, like, I've learned in my own ways that things, even luxuries, is like clean water. Those things are not, or even those things are not at the core of happiness. You can find people who are happy in miserable situations, and you can find
Or
people who
miserable to
are
us, but they're
miserable.
not miserable. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
So I've tried to caution myself on that too, just because like I've even looked at my own life and said, look how different my life was 6 months ago to where it is now.
yeah.
And so things can change really quickly, and if you allow your circumstances to determine your happiness, you will find that you're constantly seeking it, because your life is going to change at the drop of a dime. It happens to us all the time. So that said, the religion is a constant, right? And I think that, like, that is the balance. I think that the world is a very temporary place, and there's a lot of things that come and go, that are very fleeting, that will make you happy or sad in the moment. But I have found that having a connection, even that internal monologue with a higher power, for me, I'm not afraid to admit that, like, I believe in Christ. That said, I mean, I think I wrestled with, ever since I was little, growing up Catholic, the Catholic faith sort of teaching you a religion over spiritual life, and sort of being caught up in the how you practice your faith and what that means rather than what the purpose or the end goal of your spirituality is. And so, that has caused me to be frustrated or get lost at times. And so the more I've distanced myself from like the organized religion, and just focused in on the principles of what I believe to be the guide, the framework of who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to treat one another, and what that path to heaven really means, the better it is. Again, because I think the Catholic faith for me, helped embody some of that victim consciousness. You're always reminded that Christ died for you, that you're a sinner, that that you are a bad person, and so that also beats into your head this like, I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough mentality. And while it's good to stay humble, I also think that can be an unhealthy thing. So my desire is to have a loving relationship with my Creator that flows through me, allows me to continue to prune the tree, as my wife likes to remind me. Like, I am not perfect. I look out at the outward world and I can get triggered and I can get upset and I can judge others. But I think that spiritual, that connection with God, it always kind of pulls me back to forgiveness, and a recognition of looking inward. Man, it's very easy to look out in the world and to see how everyone else is struggling. It's a lot harder to look inward and to challenge yourself to own your own life's journey. And I think that's sort of where my faith is. It's kind of that constant that pulls me in and kind of recalibrates me when I get too lost.
I think so. I agree too. I used to feel when I was younger, I was kind of beaten to my head that if you question religion, that you're wrong. But in my own spiritual walk, I've had good questions, and I've always felt pulled towards that. Like that, no, it's good to question, because a lot of times I think society throws the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to religion. Like we blame God or Christ for the things that man has tainted with a lot of things. A lot of the dogma, a lot of the don't eat fish on Friday, or a lot of these things, these rituals,
the hypocrisy of man.
Exactly. And that's man, and it's not divine. And I think it's important for each of us to have that walk. And I feel like there's like everybody, even like people that claim to be devout atheists, they kind of are, the atheism kind of becomes their own religion. It's like but it's sad that they're driven that way. But I think it's important to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, and to not, and kind of SPD and I talked about this, and kind of, it sounds like you have the same mindset of, I'm not perfect myself, so for me to judge someone else's imperfections, it's like, well, who am I to do that? As long as what someone else is doing is not affecting me, and go be happy.
I mean, it's a fine line, right? Because you don't want, now again, as a dad, like, I don't want to sit on my hands and allow society or the world in which my son is going to grow up in to be one that is going to be full of sin or whatever it may be that I disagree with, right? Like, and I don't want to like offend anybody, but like, I don't want to like, I just, there is an inherent quality, I think, especially like, I see it in my wife as the mama bear. She wants to protect her son, but I think it's different as a man, as the dad. Like, I feel this, you get this fire in your belly that you want to go out there and like, with the axe in hand, and you want to like, there are moments in which you're like, man, like, how do we not revolutionize? How do we not rise up in the street? Like, this is enough. When is enough enough?
Yeah.
But like again, like I think that it is an easier thing to allow your emotions to take you to that place, and it's more comforting, right? It's more comforting to look outward and to. I found this, and I know SPD talked a lot about his relationship with his parents. I've found this as I've gotten older and examined my parents and my childhood, and I see my mom now through a different lens now that I'm a parent myself. And I think, like, you know, I see my mom's coping mechanism is a lot of trying to fix other people's problems, trying to go out there and to be the servant and always like pour her energy into other people, because it allows her to not have to sit in silence with herself and think about ways in which she wishes that she was different, or ways, or the work that would it take to change herself. And so I feel like I'm trying to really hard to start to find that balance of, like, you know, it is important to find peace with the way the world is and to trust that things are going to happen the way they're supposed to, but to also have principles and values that you won't waver on.
Yeah.
But I'm finding that those things, allow those things to shape you as a person and your home, your family. Allow your family, your legacy to stand for something. You can't worry so much and pour all your energy into all the outside, especially now, because we are constantly inundated with media that is telling us how bad all the awful things that are happening in the world. You're constantly being flooded with things that will upset you and trigger you, and whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump, whether you're a Christian or an atheist, there is something to be said for the media. There are people out there who want you to be upset because they know they're gonna pull you in,
and they want us to be divided.
Exactly, and they're gonna make sure your energy and your focus is going towards those things that divide you, rather than you working on yourself so that you can feel at peace. They don't, like, there are, and it's an awful thing to say, but there is evil out there, guys, and there are people who will, for their own selfish gain, be happy to manipulate you so that you are unhappy. So forgiving those people and recognizing that, like, that's on them, but not participating in their game and being wise enough to see it, I think is a big step in one's own personal journey. Like, as I'm getting older here, I'm starting to see, like, you know, I care less and less about the like you and SPD talked about the Jason Aldean song and all that. Like, I care less and less about these things that are purposely out there to trigger an emotion and a response. You know, like, I'm over the drag queen bingo thing and all these things that, like, people want to throw them out there so that it's dividing you. Let it go.
Do you think that negativity, though, it's because it gets clicks? Do you think there's something inherent in us as humans to look for we're kind of subconsciously looking for the problem, and how does that relate to trying to promote a positive wrestling show, where so much of the wrestling online community is very, like, it almost mirrors politics. Like, you know, like WWE is one party and AEW is the other party.
Yeah.
How hard is it to be positive and to promote positive things when so much online and so, like, do you feel like we're drawn to, like, the bad news, like bad news sells?
Yeah. I'll draw on some personal anecdotes on that with the whole Dynamite download thing. You know, that was one of the things that really got me discouraged, and kind of pushed me to back away. On top of, like, my life is just a lot. I mean, wrestling is a few notches down on my list now, comparatively speaking, than it was when. Yeah, right. Yeah. It has its place in my life, but
you got a kid or something, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, like, you know, when I started this with SPD, it was a dream of ours to be able to interact on a personal level with Britt Baker and Wardlow and, you know, QT Marshall and Sammy Guevara. We've had so many people, actual superstars, you know, bumping into Chris Jericho on an elevator and being able to chat with him, like, you know, sitting down and having dinner, like he talked about, sitting down and having dinner with Thunder Rosa, buying margaritas for MJF, and him literally roasting me for an hour in the bar while just making fun of me the whole time. You know, things like that where you're just like, that's a dream. That was just so fun.
That's him hugging you, by the way.
Yeah,
MJF calling you the drizzling shits. That's him hugging you.
We had so much. We had, you know, I was. There are times in which I know that I was overly sensitive to some of the MJF stuff, but then, like, I look back on it now, and we played games with him, and we had a lot of fun with him. He participated. He was a part of it. It was great. But even that said, right, like, a lot of the dreams that we had, you know, like Wardlow connected with us on a real level. That dude was so cool. We've had multiple instances where we connected with these guys and had some real conversations similar to what we're having here, Mind. And where it was like, we felt like we were able to get behind the characters sometimes and really connect with these guys on a human level. And we also realized that we were just two dudes, two friends, like, recording on a laptop. We were not busted open. We are not, you know, Fightful. We are not this big conglomerate. And to have a guy like Wardlow, you know, take 2 hours out of his day, literally, to like plan leaving the gym, to come home, to be with us, to not be with his girlfriend, to just focus on us. Like, it was really, you know, for us, it was a pure joy. And we tried to make all those conversations, we're really proud of those conversations that we've had with them. But then there were so many instances where we saw it. Brian Cage got kind of ridiculed for appearing, like, some of the things, like some of the you saw like outlets like Raja and stuff, like these websites grabbing things, taking them out of context, making these people look unhappy or disgruntled or taking things that were like. And you could have an hour and a half positive conversation with somebody, but we saw firsthand multiple times where things that, you know, someone was being vulnerable or real, not being negative, but just being real. Yeah. And the negative, that clip, that portion was the only thing that was talked about. That was the thing that blew up. When we had real, like, incredible topic conversations, we saw it happen. And it was hard because it's like, you realize that these guys went to bat to stand behind what we believed in, this positive thing. And again, the positivity thing, the toxic positivity, I'm the heel of the group, you know, and so there are times in which I want to go and be like a JD from NY or whatever, where you just want to rip the product and be real. But then I also, SPD and I have gone back to day one, and I know you're big on this because you're a huge Mission Pro Thunder Rosa advocate. You know, every one of these people is a human being chasing a dream. Yeah. Every single one of them. Every single one of them, whether it's somebody that you think sucked or it's your favorite wrestler, that is somebody who went off the beaten path. You know, like, it takes a lot of courage to chase a dream. And these are people who have gone out and they've taken the road less traveled. They are trying to live a life that they see fulfillment and purpose in. And how dare I, crush that like, how, like, it takes a very weak person to be the critic who tears someone down. And so, you know, we always center that being the focus of the positivity of our show, is like, always remember that in any performance there is somebody that is doing something that they've dreamed of, and focus in on those moments.
Yeah, and I think what you guys do great at, and this is something that I think kind of goes along with the difference between toxic positivity and real positivity, is you guys aren't afraid to be critical. You guys are, I mean, and that's the thing. I think toxic positivity is the absence of avoiding avoiding critique, avoiding
Everything's
constructive
great.
criticism. Yeah, everything's super. There is but you're right, and I think a lot of people, and let's be honest, a lot of things that get clicks, and like I've really cooled on places like What Culture or a few of these places because they'll take like a tweet, like Soraya will tweet something, and they'll run and turn an entire article about it. And I think that it's kind of the same situation with like CNN or like 24-hour news cycle. Is there's constant need to generate a story out of something.
Buzz.
And so Britt Baker just liking someone else's tweet turns into this big beef.
You're right.
And but then what doesn't get the story is Thunder Rosa and Marina Shafir breaking bread with each other. That's like page 6. Right. But the sandbagging thing was page 1, and everybody has to chime in. But the thing is this, though, this is where I come back to, and this is also from my experience when we were doing radio, is don't give up on this positive thing, because although, you're not thank God you're not JD from New York or the whatever the other.
I'll grab my glass of bourbon.
Neckbeard person, but but the wrestlers know this. Like WrestleJoy was mentioned in one of the Kenny Omega intros, and that's because of their impact, and the fact that QT Marshall pointed you guys out in that scrum.
We'll always hold on to that.
That's a divine message to you, saying, hey, the fact that Will Hobbs, I mean, I hope I can say this, but
sure,
Will Hobbs talked to you guys and said, hey, I knew who you guys were.
Right.
Never talked to him before. He knew who you guys were. That means your buzz, your name's around there. So and I think we need that. And I think that there's a need for truth. It's kind of like the same thing with media in general, because for every CNN or Fox News, there's there's a Joe Rogan, or there's a Kim Iverson, or there's people that are, they're not necessarily like they're willing to not to even admit when they're wrong, but they want to talk about truth. They don't want to take a side or they don't want to compromise
or at least
integrity.
Or at least their version of truth, right? Like
where
you recognize that it's like, this is someone who is being authentic, and whether I agree with them or not, I can at least give them the respect that they're being real with me and not regurgitating talking points from someone above them, and
they're not compromised.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that is true. I mean, like we hold on to the fact that, like, without fail, our Instagram stories, Colton Gunn watches every one of them. Love it. I always love that. And like, so we try really hard to hold on to those little victories. I know that's one thing that SPD always talks about, is the little victories that really add up. And looking back on what we've built, again, so many cool moments that, as a guy who was a little Hulkamaniac, like I've been a wrestling fan since as long as I could walk. Right. So it's like, for somebody who can, rub elbows with a Ricky Starks, and him just kind of hang out with us at the bar, or, again, like interact with so many, like there have been so many episodes of AEW television, not to go off too far onto the wrestling thing, but like there have been so many episodes where SPD has like shot me a text and been like, dude, do you realize that like 7 out of 10 people on this show we've talked to, hold on,
I gotta put the banner up here. Go ahead. Keep going.
Thank you. Yes.
No, I have to do it for myself. But 7 out of 10, 7 out of 10 you've talked.
Yeah, he'll just give you those little reminders. And I think tying it back to the Mental Health Mondays, to get back on topic, is like, remember those little moments in your own life and your own journey where it's like, don't forget to celebrate the little victories. Don't forget to build yourself up. The self-talk is so important. Whether it's that you got out of bed and went for that morning walk, or read your devotional, or if just what are the things that are important to you, that you want to be able to look back on and said, I lived this certain way. And how are those little choices during the day that you're in how are those building that legacy for you? And don't be afraid to celebrate those things.
Celebrate your victories. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I like to take my students through every first week of school. I always do this, like, okay, we're going to do a math review, and I'll do 10 problems on the board, addition problems. And one of them will be like 4 plus 5, right? And then everybody writes their answers, and then I write the answers on the board. But when I get to 4 plus 5, I'll write 10.
Yeah.
4 plus 5 equals 10. And then immediately all the kids, yeah, they're like the Leo meme, you know? and I go, and of course I let them talk about how, that one's wrong. And then I said, okay. And I put a check next to the ones that are right. And I said, I got 9 out of 10 correct. How is it that you guys only focus on the one I got wrong? And, well, you're the teacher. You're supposed to know everything. I said, maybe I don't. And that, of course, the conversation about critical thinking. But then, celebrating our victories. I still got 90%. I still got 9 out of 10 correct. That's still passing. That's still great.
You do 9 out of 10 things right every single moment. You're doing all right.
You're doing better than all right. Yeah, exactly. You're doing great. I got to add. So, really quick, I want to ask a wrestling question. You seem to Colton Gunn seems to be a big fan of Dynamite Download. Is he your favorite member of the Bullet Club Gold?
Oh man, I'll be honest. Like, I am a geek for the Gun Club in general. I love those guys. Austin came on our show, and I'll always have a soft spot for him just because he's such a goof, and he genuinely seems to be just loving his life, and that's what I'm talking about. Is that is a guy who you can tell is happy because he looks at his life and he has to pinch himself, and that's authentic, right? This is a kid, so when you see somebody who's just living their best life and loving their life, I love that. Colton is really interesting to me because he is he's the yin to the yang with Austin, or with Austin is that bigger personality, a lot like me, and Colton's kind of that, I feel, a little bit more. Yeah, he's the SPD. And so I do find him an interesting cat. It's hard to not right now, I think Juice Robinson is the buzz of the internet a little bit. The guy.
That's right, Crayfish. That's right. You gotta be rock hard, man.
Dude, you were set for that.
I was ready for you. I was ready for you, Crayfish.
Yeah, look at those eyes, man. How do you not love that personality?
Hey, I was eating some powdered donuts. That's why some of my beard looks white. But you gotta be rock hard. That's my mental health Monday. My advice to everybody is you gotta be rock hard.
Get those out. Yeah, man. I love it, dude. Yeah. I love the dynamic these guys have. Juice and Colton together is just the energy is insane. I love it.
It's insane. It's insane. I'm dating Tony Storm.
I mean, dude, living his best life too, right? I mean, my God.
She can do the sweet chin music with me. All right, I'm going to let you get back to Mind Runner, but just remember, Bullet Club Gold for life.
Man, I love your impressions. That is fantastic. For those of you who don't watch, that is just totally taking the episode to off the deep end. I love it. We're sitting here having the introspective talk, and then I love it.
Juice with the flyby.
And that's one of the great things about wrestling, man. It makes you feel like a kid again, where you can just laugh and have a good time.
All right, we're going to take a quick break from solving all of the world's problems to tell you about a good friend of mine and a service she's offering. Are you tired of feeling like your dream financial future is out of reach? Are you struggling with overwhelming debt, trying to pay off your home early, or simply wanting to give more? Well, my good friend Vanessa Rudder-Jackson is here to help. An educator and military veteran, Vanessa is here to guide you through the confusion and make your dream financial future a reality. With her certified financial coaching services, she'll help you create a personalized plan that sets you up to win with money. As an educator and a mother of two, Vanessa understands the challenges of scraping by and stretching paychecks. She's been there, and she knows how to navigate the financial landscape to help you thrive. Don't let financial stress hold you back any longer. Take the first step towards financial freedom today with Rudder Jackson Financial Coaching. Reach out to Vanessa today for a free 45-minute consultation at varudder34@gmail.com or go to tinyurl.com/RJ-Money-Coach. That's varudder34@gmail.com or tinyurl.com/RJ-Money-Coach. Remember, it's never too late to take control of your finances and achieve your dreams. Start your journey to financial freedom with Rudder Jackson Financial Coaching today. All right, now let's get back to solving the world's problems with the most charming host on the interwebs.
Love it.
Good stuff, man. It's all, and that's another thing too, is you gotta find the things that make you joy. You don't hide them. Don't be embarrassed about them. For so long, there's so many things like I held on to from my childhood that I was still into, and I was afraid that it made me less of a man to be into G.I. Joes or to be into this or that. And now it's like, embrace your inner geek.
Absolutely.
I mean, if it's interfering with your life, then maybe look at it. But if it's bringing you joy, if the joy is a net positive, go for it. Enjoy what makes you happy.
Yeah, man. Life it's a cliche, but I mean, we're not here for a long time, and the life is very short. You don't know when you're gonna go, and it's important to make sure that you have those little things that keep you happy. Like don't let go of those things because of what the outside world tells you is important. You know yourself better than anybody else. So continue to just be true to you. And dude, if you like G.I. Joes, that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, I mean, like video game culture is bigger now than ever. So like, it's totally acceptable to hold on to things that I think that are, and I think that like, I see it now too, through a different lens as a dad. You see like, the world wants you to give up those things because they want you to find joy in the material. They want you to find joy in what they deem is important. Yeah. And that's usually some sort of consumption. To me, when I see my son, he's 18 months old, and you just see the joy of a child is a beautiful thing. And it's something that we so rarely as adults allow ourselves to feel. Where you just giggle and you have fun, and it's wild how the simplest things, a belly splits once in a while, how that'll make I mean, like how those things can just get you to giggle, and I encourage people to like, don't let the world make you lose that, man. Like that is important. They want you to be unhappy. They want you to let go of those things that bring you joy. You're more easily controlled that way. So, no, man, I'm all for it, dude. Like wrestling will always be a part of my life. Like, I don't like, some people will tease you about it, but like, you just laugh it off. And to me, it's no different than, I mean, I'm a football guy too. It's all the same, man. It's all entertainment. It's all a distraction to make you feel good for a little bit, not think about stuff, So
we heard SBD's side, but how did Raphael meet Leonardo?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I like Sean was, we went to a really big school, right? Like our graduating class was in the thousands. So we went to a really, really big high school, and even amongst that many people on campus, Sean was always kind of a cool dude, man. You just kind of knew that Sean was cool.
Did he have the shades back then?
He had the bleach blonde hair. He really bleached his hair. He had he just was like he carried himself like he was a cool guy. And so even amongst thousands of people, you just kind of knew Sean was a cool guy, and there was something different about him. I was more a member of the outcasts, right? Like I would be right there with Tony Storm and Ruby. not that like I was ever really like super emo or anything, but like I was not one of the cool kids, so to speak. So, yeah, I think like it was kind of a goal of mine to be popular. I wanted friends,
Yeah.
and I immediately like, I recognized like this is a guy who has no problem having friends. He's like incredibly well liked, so I wanted to get his attention. So it was just like one of those circumstances where, again, like I went above and beyond sometimes to be funny and goofy to get him to like pay attention to me at points, but that was sort of my day to day. Like especially like in high school, like again, I would hold the door open throughout all of passing time, come up with nicknames for people, call people their full name, make sure that they're like, how are they doing? Like, start conversations with them. Being like, I just was like a very big like talk show host type of personality.
Yeah.
And so, definitely a hard guy to figure out the whole onion thing. But I think like what really ended up breaking the ice for us was, we ended up getting into like a class called team sports, which was just like in our senior year. It was just like a very, you go and you play basketball. Like it was an easy class, right? You're going to play basketball or volleyball. Like it was a very like like a goofy class, and there were four of us that just kind of hit it off really, really well. Andy was one of his buddies that played hockey with him, and Trammell was another guy. So all four of us just kind of like started hanging out in the class, and they were funny. They liked my sense of humor, and we just kind of hit it off. And again, started off in kind of group settings. And then, I think that Sean kind of was, he doesn't give himself credit for being as deep of a guy as he is.
Yeah.
Like he tries really hard to kind of like play his cards close to the chest. But I felt like right away, like very early on when we were all just kind of buddies, like drinking, hanging out, like having fun. And just like, even in those moments, I knew that like Sean wanted more from a friendship than just getting pizza and going to watch the game. Like
getting pizza and
getting
green,
chicks,
green
like,
news.
Yeah, he wanted more than that, right? Like
Yeah.
I always knew that he wanted more. Like I could tell. And we would have a blast. We would have a lot of fun and be goofy. Like we would blast like in his Jeep with the top down and stuff. We would blast George Michael through the parking lot, and we would have a lot of fun and be goofy. And there are a lot of great memories from when we were growing up. Just a lot of fun. But like there was always something different about Sean. And I think part of it was, as he talked about and opened up to you, was that like Sean always like was reserved and didn't know how to talk through his emotions. And I was so often forced to deal with my own emotions that I was like a very emotional dude. And so like I dove deep into literature and in different avenues in which like I could explore what it means to be a person and a deeper level. And I felt like he and I kind of connected on that. Like I kind of like helped him figure out some of that stuff and open up a little bit as he talked about. And Sean taught me a lot about what it means to be comfortable in your own skin. And so I think that we balanced each other out right away. Like there was a lot of that, like just balancing of our dynamic. Like he would make sure I didn't go off the deep end too much. But I would make sure that he like would put himself out there and not be afraid to like go to the party or hang out or go talk to the girl that liked him, whatever. I was always the guy who would encourage him. That's always kind of been my role is building him up. I have no problem being like the wingman, so to speak. That was always kind of my role in that mentality of trying to build him up.
That's cool. And thus the Ninja Turtles were born.
Yeah.
And Leo and Raphael. Were you guys wrestling fans back then, or was it part of the whole thing, or did you guys to say in general you wanted to do something together?
It's funny because like high school wrestling wasn't really like part of our friendship, right? Like I was a wrestling fan since I was a little kid. My dad would take me to events, and like I was just a diehard WWF guy, just
Mhm.
really into those early days with Hogan and Warrior and all those big personalities, Macho
Yeah.
Man. And it never really left my life. So like I was always a big fan, like middle school, DX and NWO and all that was really cool. But like our friendship, we really didn't connect with wrestling, so to speak, um, until AEW came around. I mean, like we would talk wrestling, but Sean, like after DX and NWO kind of died, he wasn't really into wrestling very much. Like it was casually like but
Yeah.
I never stopped watching wrestling. I've always been committed to wrestling. I've always loved it. But he's kind of like he was a very casual fan for a very, very long time. And then when AEW got back on the scene, it was just different. And
Yeah.
it hit different and connected on a different level. And it kind of we found ourselves talking about it all the time. And it just pulled us both in on a different level. So, yeah, I think like there were other things that made us more connected as friends beyond
Mhm.
wrestling, and I feel like AEW really has been a really a blessing in our friendship because it's another thing that keeps us connected now. Even though he lives in South Carolina, I live in Michigan still.
That's awesome. Has
Mhm.
he tried to get you to buy a Bronco yet?
The dude is you mentioned the our Bronco life stuff, man. Like he is unbelievable with his energy and his ability to just
Yeah.
constantly like pour himself into all that stuff. I can't do
Cool.
it. The social media stuff is just, and I see it blowing up for him and
Yeah.
blossoming and creating good things in his life. So I'm happy for him. But yeah, the guy is just got a relentless motor. Just constantly. He's that type of person. When you go on a vacation with him, he would tease me and my wife. We were the nap squad and they were the adventure squad because my wife and I were tapping out at like 10:30, 11 o'clock. I'm going to bed, bro. And he's the type that wants to party into the, he's always been as long, and this is one of the things that like I appreciate in our friendship. He's the type of guy who wants to get all the juice from the squeeze of the orange, man. The
Juice.
guy that he wants the juice.
Yeah.
He wants to be able to like close the book of life knowing that he went after it and he got the most out of every day. And that's kind of an inspiring thing. I mean, he's just that he's wired that way as a guy.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
You guys play off well each other,
Yeah.
well off of each other. I became a fan of Dynamite Download because of the rapport that you guys have with each other,
Yeah.
and the positivity too. And again, it wasn't that naive positivity; it was realistic. And I hope you guys continue.
Well, you're a part of the group, man. I mean, in our eyes, like this thing would have died if it wasn't for you.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, and we've really come to consider you a friend. And same goes out to a lot of those people out there who have the Loris, the Bryans.
Yeah.
We've had several people who have really supported us and given us such kind words, and time is the greatest currency in our lives. So the fact that we had people who just like, you guys don't know me from a ham sandwich, like I'm a total stranger to you, but the fact that you would take time out of your day to watch our show or listen to what we had to say about a wrestling show and
Hmm.
participate in it and to build it up and to try to promote it and encourage us, it speaks volumes to your guys' character and has always been something that we've, Sean and I have been grateful for, is like, man, like we were connecting with people, and we did, like, even no matter what happened with Dynamite Download, no matter how big or small it would be, we were able to build some cool friendships out of that whole thing and had a lot of laughs along the way. And we've met some great people. And again, you're one of them. We really like this is a conversation. This was an outlet that I've really been wanting to have, to get to know you on a different level. Because all of our conversation is usually like fast paced. It's a
Yeah.
lot of wrestling content, and we have a lot of fun with you, Aaron. But there's a a cool depth to who you are and a different perspective that you bring that we really appreciate. So it's been good chatting with you on this level for sure.
Thank you, brother. Can I be Casey Jones? Can I?
Yeah, I like it. I like
Casey
it.
Jones. Hey.
I like it, man.
Well,
yeah. Casey Jones and Raph get along just fine. Man.
There you
after,
go.
after their initial battle, yeah, I get it.
Well, the other thing too is like, we I wouldn't even say heated, but we had a spirited discussion about CM Punk. But what I love about it is neither one of us were like neither one of us were upset with the person at all. We had we had our pushback, but those, I feel like we need in society, we need that kind of respectful discourse. I almost feel like there's a lot of folks that we've lost the understanding of how to disagree with somebody, or how to, and even something. I mean, our thing was small. It wasn't even really a disagreement. It was just like, like, is pineapple a topping for pizza type of thing. Right. But there's a lot of times I think people forget to have civil discourse, and it another one of those throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you don't agree with everything I think, then I'm blocking you, I'm canceling you, and forget you. And I feel like we need to live a lot more and be a lot more. I mean, there's certain absolutes where if it affects you a certain way, you got to say something. But I feel like we need to get back to being able to have those, be separating ourselves from our opinions. And that's one of the reasons I became a teacher, is I want kids to be critical thinkers. But when you really break down the scientific method, when you break down scientific investigation, you have a question, and then you develop a hypothesis. But it's so important, and this is why I teach the kids the first week, is you are not the hypothesis. And if your hypothesis based on the data is proven wrong, you're not wrong. You're not a bad scientist. Your hypothesis is incorrect, but a good scientist comes with its conclusion. And I think we need to treat a lot of things like that. We get locked up. I mean, I've been proven wrong it's way too many times in my life to think I know everything. I mean, that goes back to the whole 25-year-old, oh, I know everything. But like, I think if we can learn to separate our like who we are versus our opinions, and be flexible, because I think sometimes people, their opinions become their identity.
That is, mind?
I think some of it's human nature. I think tribalism goes back to a simpler times. I think there's a need for our team. It's kind of like with football. It's a lot with politics. It's a lot with WWE versus AEW. There's a need for our team to be better because of the amount of emotional investment. I think the reason granted, I think you and I talked about this earlier, that there are some evil people out there. There are people that just want to start trouble, and they just want to get that negative attention. But I think a lot of times it's like with WWE and AEW, or Republican Democrat, or whether it's, the Jets versus the Patriots, whatever. They've invested so much of themselves into that.
You're on something here.
They have trouble separating. Like, they have trouble separating. Like, my dad loved Tom Brady till he went to Tampa Bay, and now he's a scumbag. It's that kind of stuff. And it's like, and I think that if we can, like, Lori Young watches WWE and AEW, and like, you can, like, I'm a Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa fan. That exists, but there's so many people, you have to be one side or the other. And I think when it comes to tribalism, there's an innate, it's almost subconscious that we want our side to win, our tribe to win. And anything that's against our tribe, we get hostile about. And and it really takes a superhuman effort to not, and there's times where I get upset, I'll sit there and go, what? And if I tweeted or posted everything that I almost did, like, I've got so many deleted things that I didn't post on Twitter or on Facebook, because I realized this is going to get me in a lot of trouble. It's the old Abraham Lincoln, where he said that if you ever get into, and I got a cool book for you to read too, called Lincoln on Leadership.
Yeah.
It's a very small book, but look it up. It's not very long, but it really is cool on, because it takes Abraham Lincoln's presidency and compares it to modern day leadership, whether it's in business or in a school setting or in politics, whatever. But what's cool about it is he would, one of the things he would do is whenever he was upset with somebody, and he was often upset with his generals during the Civil War, he'd write a letter and just get it all out. He'd just write, you mother father, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. He would just write it all out,
Right.
have it all finished. Then he'd put it in the drawer, close the drawer, go home. And if he came back the next morning and and read it again, if he felt the same way, he'd send the letter. If he had a change of heart, he'd throw it away and write a new letter. And I think that's what's cool about that is there's a duality there. He knows enough to go cool off and like look at situations with fresh eyes, but he also understood the importance of getting it out. Because I think if you try to just, I'm going to go sleep on it and then think about it tomorrow, it could still fester. You got to get it out.
That's true, man. That is true.
And so a lot of times I've had emails that I've typed on, and then by the end of it, after I've looked at it and deleted most of it, it just says, thank you for your thoughts.
Yep. Yep. No, that's very insightful. And I think that the tribalism running through the veins of what you talk through, kind of weaving through that. I do think that there's a reason why that seems to be growing more and more in more and more superficial things. Yeah, I think people are wrapping themselves up, their identities, in things that matter, that are much more surface level now than ever before. And as you've talked about, you can spend hours arguing the merits of wrestling, of one company versus the other. Football is the same thing. I remember growing up thinking, man, if the Cleveland Browns won the Super Bowl, my life would be just complete. My whole life would be so great. My dad would be so happy. Things would be so great. And it's well, that hasn't happened yet. But I've come to terms with it doesn't. These are just a bunch of it doesn't matter. This is not me. I root for them. I want them to do well, but they are not part of my identity I allowed them to be growing up. And I think that the more comfortable you become with who you are, the less likely you feel you need to prove yourself to be right to others. Mm-hmm. And so the less likely you are to engage in those types of conversations or in those types of settings. It's just if that person thinks that chocolate is that much better than vanilla and they want to argue they want to start a fight over it, let them engage someone else on that. I'm going to continue to live my life in my way. That said, I think that your conversation about Lincoln, that kind of reflection on his ability to recognize the importance of getting it out. I think, that's something that I'm going to take away from this conversation because, it is very easy to say oh, I'm going to sleep on it and I'll think about it tomorrow and I'll see if I still feel the same way or whatever. I'm going to try to let it go. That's something that I part of my personality is I'm going to take some time to cool off, and you end up losing the fire in your belly about it. And you lose this, you end up letting it go. Mm-hmm. And that's always been kind of my resolution to a lot of issues is just let it go.
Yeah.
Which can be good, but it can also be bad because it does allow you to ignore things that need to be addressed. And I think the way that you talked about it, writing it down, getting it out so that you're not festering on that emotion, that therapeutic expression of getting that out, but then being mature enough to say, I'm going to come back to this. I'm not going to stew it on anymore. It's gone. I've let it, but I can come back to it if it's important enough for me to address it, that emotion, how I felt. Maybe I can either take that and make it better now that I've had better perspective, or I can see the validity in what I said and stand behind it. You know,
absolutely.
So I really like what you said there, and it's something I'm going to think about. I really think that's something that will help me.
It's huge. I mean, it's taken me 40 years to figure that out. And a lot of it too, because, and Deb has really taught me the other side of the token. We've all met people that they're like, I'm going to speak truth, and I don't care who hears it. I don't care. I'm going to speak the truth, and I'm going to say it loud. And those
whether you like me or not,
whether you like it or not. And those are the people. Those people struggle because they struggle keeping jobs. They struggle keeping friendships because they don't know diplomacy. But then the other side of it is there's the people that are too afraid to speak up. It's kind of like the Adam Sandler anger management. The guy, the clerk is that keeps it bottled up inside without validating because sometimes you have reason to be pissed off.
You should be fired up.
You should be pissed off about this, but taking that moment, get it out of your system, think on it, and then you can have a better strategy of how to handle the situation. And a lot of times when I was young, when I was back to the 25-year-old thing, I'd mouth off and I'd get in trouble. Or I'd speak my mind and I'd get in trouble, and I'd be like, why? I was right. Well, I was right, but it was what I said and how I said it and when I said it and who I said it to were all the wrong parts, even though what I said was true. But then, so I became for that time, I started being much more reserved, but I almost got to the point where I was afraid to speak up when I should. And that's one of the things Deb brought out me is sometimes you have to speak up for yourself, but you have to be diplomatic and smart about it. Yeah. And like, there's times where, but going back to that whole thing is it's healthy to get it out. It's healthy, even if no one's gonna hear it. It's great when you have someone like a significant other or a best friend that you can vent to. But even if you don't have that person, just write something
rather than having it bounce off the walls within your mind and continue to play that ping pong within your head. It can consume you.
Yes,
and just the act of getting it out can allow you to no longer be prisoner to that emotion or that thought anymore. Now that's a very mature way to approach situations, and it's a blend of the head and the heart, and that's something that for me, as somebody who I've realized in a lot of my journey, I've allowed myself to err on the side of the emotion, the heart, be recognizing that there's a place for both. Like logic and discernment is a very important thing. Discernment is like SPD talked a lot about the word of the year and his motto that he likes to have, and he's challenged me to do those with him. And I've done different words, but discernment is one of the words that has always kind of stuck with me, even after it was no longer the word of the year for me. It's just something where you have a wisdom as to what you're going to pour your energy into, and how you're going to, like you talked about, how you're going to engage situations, how you're going to handle them. It's just continuing to look at your life with the filter of saying, just like a filter, there are things that need to pass through that. Right. Yep. There are emotions, there are thoughts, there are principles and values that I want to pass through this filter, this internal filter. I want to allow out there in the world. But I need to show discernment to catch the debris, the hurtful things, the things that I'll regret. I need to be able to build that filter. And so that has been sort of something that has stuck with me. How can I continue to improve that in the way that I interact with others?
Absolutely. And it goes back to your emotions. Like, you can't help how you feel. Yeah. It's just like if you walk outside and it starts raining, you can't help feel wet, or if it's on a hot day, you can't help feeling hot. You can do something about it. How you handle how you feel is up to you. And that's what I think a lot of times, like a lot of my third grade students they'll say, well, he made me mad. and we'll talk through it, and I'll say, well, okay, yeah, that's what that person did would make most people mad. That's a legitimate emotion.
So you validated their feelings.
Exactly. But shoving a pencil up their nose because they did that is not their appropriate response. And it's being able to separate that, I think, is important. Well, Crayfish, this has been phenomenal, man. Under the shell as much as we could, and I hope this is the first of many. Any final words of wisdom or more than a fortune cookie advice for people out there when it comes to mental health?
No, I mean, I hope that the conversation was fruitful for people out there. All I can say is, we're all on our own journey, and I think that as I've become a dad, we listen to a lot of different songs with our little guy, and "Forever Young" by Bob Dylan is one that really gets my wife emotional. And it's at times gotten me just watching her with my son with those lyrics. And I think that one of the things that I've really been reflecting on is one of the lines about climbing a ladder to the stars, or building a ladder to the stars and climbing on every rung. And what I will say is society will teach you that ladder to the stars is through accumulating wealth or recognition or praise, that it's an external thing. The more that I spend time with my own mental health journey and I reflect on my life, I will say that is an internal journey, just as much as it can be as an external journey. There are things that we can do that we should celebrate accomplishments that we have in this life. But there are things that you constantly try to climb the ladder of your internal journey towards your higher consciousness, your higher spiritual, where you're supposed to be, your true self. I would say, like, the biggest thing for me walking away and that has helped me start that climb, and it's a tough one, is continuing to try to center yourself on who you really are. Outside of all the noise and the influence of the world around you, we are constantly inundated, even with people who are trying to help you, who have good intentions. You're constantly hearing voices, mine included right now, about what you should do or who you should be or what you should strive for. All I would say is really spend time with yourself and try to block out that external noise and try to find who you really are and who you want to be, and spend the rest of your days trying to become that person. And that have that vision of who you want to be, that internal journey that will guide you through tough chapters. So that to me is something that I'm learning. It's being reinforced right now in my own life about who I need to be, who I want to be. It's really defined by, it's in here, guys. It's a spiritual and mental journey. And it's worth continuing to go after it. So really, really try your best to connect with who you are. That would be my biggest takeaway.
That is the only way to be rock hard. Oh, yeah. That's how you get it. Yeah. That's my advice for you. You better listen to Crayfish. You listen to Dynamite Download.
I love it, man.
Crayfish.
Making me laugh, leaving this thing. That's why we love you, man. You are a funny dude. You're genuinely a good guy. You're hilarious, man. I love it. Thanks a lot for having me on, being able to share some deep talks, but also share the laughs and the joy and the silliness, man. You got to be silly, guys. That's a good takeaway too, mind. Like, don't be afraid to be silly. Enjoy the simple things, man. Like when a buddy does a crazy invitation. I love it, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Man. Well, for Crayfish, this is Mind Runner, also AA Ron, signing off. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Catch new episodes of Mental Health Mondays every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Start your week off with a smile and some inspiration.